All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another podcast. I'm really excited about this one. We have Max Cohen on the call. He is down in South Florida. His company is FL Home Buyers. He started back in 2014, and he actually started doing rentals and then kind of shifted and does wholesaling and rehabbing as well. He's a new dad. Well, I guess to a second child, about 3 weeks old. So you might hear some babies in the background,
Oh
which is
yeah,
great. Keep it authentic
definitely.
and real. But with all of that said, Max, so happy to have you on the podcast and get to chat with you a little bit more on your
Yeah,
business.
yeah, absolutely, man. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Great. So, as we always do, just take us back to the beginning, 2014. What got you started in real estate? How did you get started?
Well, I feel like I kind of had a cheat code because my grandfather was a developer in Brooklyn back in the 60s, and he built apartment buildings, and then my dad and his brothers took them over as time went on. So rentals, real estate, it's been the only thing that's fed my family and my father's, it's been feeding our generation since the 50s. So for me, I always knew without a doubt it was what I was going to do. It was just about figuring that, next step out. So
Yeah.
yeah, 2014, I was, like just turned 19 or 18 and yeah, bought a rental property in the worst part of West Palm Beach and learned by absolute fire. So yeah, it was interesting.
So did
Yeah.
you get help from like family members or did you
Yeah.
dive in by yourself? Okay.
No, I mean, I started college, I did a year and a half, 2 years, and then I just kind of realized like, these $7,000, $8,000 tuition bills for geology class, not really working for me. So um yeah, I just said, I'm like, hey, look, you know what? Got like, I think I had maybe 85, $90,000 in like a trust fund per se for college tuition. I think
Yep.
it was like a 529, something like that.
Yep. Okay.
And I pretty much begged my dad to let me take it and buy a property with it. He was like, well, you're not buying a Porsche, so you got to buy a property with it. I was like, oh, of course. So then I took that money and spent all of it on this quadplex in Riviera Beach, which is, like I said, probably the worst area in Palm Beach County. And yeah, we just kind of rolled from there. I owned that for about 3 years, and then in between that, just from collecting rents and working a TV production job in the meantime, like as a kid, saved up enough money, and then pretty much went 50-50 with my dad on two other triplexes. So at that point, he didn't handle anything. He would just kind of help out, fund it, fund the
Hmm.
other half of it, and then we'd close. And I did that because I had no other option. I had no money. I was 18 years old. So it's either beg and help to get started or, so that's what it was. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so at that point, I think it was 2018, we scaled up to 10 units. And the other 6 units that I bought after the four, those were also in a horrendous area in Broward County. We had drive-by shooting. It was just the worst neighborhood
Wow.
ever.
So was your
Yeah, it
dad
was
cool with the area? Was he like, this is where we buy it. We buy it in these areas, or were you bringing him these
no,
deals and he was like, Jesus, like this
yeah,
is pretty
yeah.
intense.
Well, because it was the only thing you can afford.
Right.
It's when you're starting, you're not looking at, you know, B class single family rentals. You're looking at what you can afford. That's it.
Hmm.
And that's what I would look for. So it was like, yeah, we found a quadplex for 180 grand. Well, what do you think you're getting for 180 grand for four doors? Same
Yeah.
thing with the triplex. They were like 135 each or something like that. It's like, what do you think you're getting at 50,000 a unit, 40,000 a unit? So that's what we did. And he was just like, hey, look, we did it right with the first one. You learned how to manage it. And then, but anyway, so long story short, to summarize, we got up to 10 units. And then I realized I'm like, we were making no money. Nobody was paying rent. Um, Not for lack of trying. I was down there every day. I was cutting grass myself. I was mushing with tenants. And so yeah, I spent like 2 years pretty much just begging these tenants to pay and learning by fire. And then we realized that it just wasn't practical. So we sold everything together and I ended up doing really well. I think we pretty much doubled our money, not on each
Wow.
property, but as a
Yeah.
whole. Yeah. Just,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, people like to say like, oh, they got the Midas touch, but No, man, I had the 2015 appreciation wave cut. It was like we just were riding
Yeah.
that wave of appreciation. So, uh, yeah, 2018, I was like super lost, didn't know what to do. I had these 10 rental properties that were absolute trash. And we got an email from a wholesaler. And I knew what wholesaling was, but I just thought it was, to be honest with you, I thought it was just like a poor man's game. If I'm being
Yeah.
totally honest, I
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
it was like the lowest rung on the totem pole. And so I get all these emails, and then one day I'm like, man, I really want to buy something bigger. And I got this email from this gentleman in my market who I've spoken with him before. We never closed on anything. It was 24 units for under 900 grand in Gainesville by UF, by University of Florida. And it was like 890,000 they wanted. And I was like, man, if I sell this property, if we close successfully on these 10 units, selling them, it gives me exactly like 30% for that commercial loan. And so it worked out like too perfectly. I don't know how. I look back now and I'm like, man, I came in all cash with like full
Yeah.
appraisals, Valley National Bank, like everything, but it worked out great. So I scaled up to 24 units. We had a management company, learned a lot of lessons through getting screwed by them. Just if you're not the one in control, then somebody else is gonna, you know, take control for you, and you might
Yeah.
not like the way it works out. So the reason I bring that up is because it was kind of all hit me at once where we closed on that property, and on the HUD, there was just all these assignment fee to XYZ LLC, assignment fee to
Yeah.
123 LLC. And I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm like, I know what they are, but I'm like, why are these guys getting $28,000 a piece? They're not doing anything,
Yeah.
you know? So then I realized, I'm like, shoot, like, these guys aren't making 2 grand. They're making 28 grand. I'm like, there's money there. And then that's when, I just started listening to all the podcasts and going on YouTube and, becoming obsessed with it all. And that was really it. I mean, yeah, that was the kind of the start of it. It was
Yeah.
my breaking point with my rental properties after having the biggest deal of my life. That HUD kind of just cracked me right on the noggin. It was
Wow.
like, hey man, yeah, there's something there. So that was kind of the spark that got me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. How did you
Yeah.
find those deals in the beginning? Those other properties?
Through wholesalers. Well, actually, no, I'm
Even the
sorry.
rentals? Even the original the first
So
rentals that you had?
the first quadplex was I mean, it was prime time to buy, man. It was 2014. The guy before me was an investor. He picked it up for like 80 grand. And now knowing what I know after being in the business for so long, he maybe put $15,000 into it and sold it to
Yeah.
me for 180, which at the time was a phenomenal deal. We ended
Right.
up selling it for 360 3 years later, 4 years later. It was just crazy. Now that thing is probably worth 600 grand.
Yeah.
It's just
Six.
nuts, man.
Yeah.
So, um, but I'm sorry, I got off track. What was the question originally?
I asked, how did you find those deals originally? Were they all through wholesalers?
No, right. I'm sorry. So yeah, so the first one was through a realtor. It was listed on the MLS, and then
Hmm.
the other two were through wholesalers. Yeah, the
Got
other
it. Yeah.
the other triplexes that we bought were packaged through a wholesaler, and
Okay.
it was bad news. The day one we pulled up, and we pulled up the car, and yeah, it was just it was everything since day one was bad. That property was a nightmare, but we learned so much. It's like those lessons that I had from that property. Yeah, sure, we didn't make a ton of money off those specific buy and sell, but the lessons I learned were I
Yeah.
probably made me more money than that.
I
So
absolutely. I know exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, some of the toughest situations, the things that you don't make as much money, the properties that you lose money on, they honestly give you the best, learning lessons you can ask for.
yeah,
I totally
yeah,
get that.
yeah. Which is honestly, in my opinion, with rental properties, it's spend the extra money on a liability insurance policy and just trust your gut. You don't like the tenant, you don't like the way they're walking, you don't like the way they're looking, don't move them in. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
just trust your gut always 110% of the time.
yeah,
I'm like, especially after doing it for a while, it's like, you know, I'm not a genius, but I know what I know about these things now. And it's like, I'm usually right. My
yeah,
gut's usually right. And whenever I don't
yeah,
listen to it, I pay
yeah.
back. So yeah,
It's
it's
funny. This reminds me of a story that so my father was in real estate too, and that's kind of what got me into it a little bit. He was a general contractor for many 30 years or so. And
Oh,
I
cool.
always appreciated that he like owned properties and rentals. And I remember he was renting to a new tenant, and he was like traveling or something with my mother, and he's like, "Hey, can you go to their house? Because I always want to make sure like who my tenants are. So can you go over to their house and the place they're currently living, just have a conversation with them." So I remember I'm like, "Are you serious?" I was like younger. I don't think I was in real estate yet when he asked me to do this, and I was like with one of my friends. And I was like, I can't believe I'm going to these people's houses. I have no idea who they are. And I
So what
go
were you
knock.
going like? Oh, you're going undercover as what? Just to say
No,
hi
no,
and.
they knew who I was. They knew that
Okay.
I was
Okay.
the landlord's son that was going to come like just chat with them. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
go over there and I come into their house and like they invite me in and they have like, like tea out and everything. And I'm sitting on their
Hmm.
couch and it was just like the funniest thing. I was like, I can't believe I'm hanging out with people just to see if their like tenant quality is good enough to
Yeah.
rent my father's place. But it was
Yeah.
like great because I got to see the place was absolutely spotless.
Right.
The dog that was running around was like small and like because my father was like they have a dog, but it was like super clean and well mannered and all that stuff. But it was like little learning lessons. And I told when I called him back and I told him all these details, he's like, okay, how about this? How about that? And just asking me again to get a good feel
Yeah.
because it is critical. Like once you bring somebody in to your property, like you're kind of partnering with them and making sure that you keep this property
Yeah.
up,
I mean, I
right?
find that my tenants now stay for an average of, because I have all single family rentals now. I have one efficiency, but it's still technically considered single family attached to it. But yeah, I mean, now my tenants stay on average for minimum 2 years, on average, probably
Yep.
three, 3.5. And yeah, you're married. I mean, honestly, sometimes you deal with them more than you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
crazy. I mean, yeah, you got to deal with them with repairs, coordinating and city inspections. It's
Hmm.
important. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
yeah, and if you don't get it right, it sucks.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
it is a headache and a half. So yeah, it's
Right.
important.
So then, so let's go to you. You had some rentals. You sold those off. You got the large apartment building,
Yeah,
and then you're like, okay, I understand wholesaling. They're making some good chunks of money. How did you transition into that? Like, what was that like? And then at what
yeah,
point were you like, oh, I need to go more direct to seller? Because, I mean, keep in mind, people that are listening, the timing between when you started 2014 all the way to 2018, things were much easier, like finding
oh yeah,
properties, right? And
oh
then
my god,
once 2019, well, really 2020, 2021 hit, it started to get much more challenging. So
yeah,
that timeline there, it might seem like, oh, it's just finding deals off the MLS. Yeah, that was the time then. You can't do that
right.
anymore. So yeah, tell us about that transition.
Firstly, I'd say there was another there was a deal. It was my first rehab that I bought. It was in Lantana, which is kind of a beachy old school town in Lake Worth area of Florida. So it's cool, old school 1950 houses, typical Florida. Anyway, I bought the house for like 130, and the wholesaler explained to me that he was like, his words were, "I'm taking a haircut on this." I'm like, okay. So the reason why I thought these guys never made any money, because on that HUD I saw he only made 3 grand. So I was like, that sucks. But then my mind shifted when I saw the 28 multiple times to all. It was $90,000 in assignment fees I paid out on that
Wow.
big. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's when I realized, I'm like, so if I was the one that found this originally and I sold it off to somebody else, I'm making more in that one property than I would be making in cash flow in 2 years. So it's like
Yeah.
that's an obvious no brainer. So that's when I realized I need to try to be direct to seller and meet these people, because I started to try to flip more and buy more rentals. And I was realizing everything was just overpriced,
Yeah.
because wholesalers, that's what we do. We try to get the most out of every deal we can.
Hmm.
Naturally, I mean, everybody would. So started cold calling. That was just a grind. I'm sure you've done it at
Hmm.
some point in your career. You just sit down and I remember the app, I think it was called Phone Burner. I didn't even know what Mojo was. It was just Phone Burner.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there. single line dialing for 8, 9 hours a day while my wife was like actually at work at a real job. And I'm like, this is not good. I'm like having conversations. I'm like, this is just not going well. I have the rental property, so I know I'm gonna be able to put food on my table, but it's like I want to make money, we all do. So
Hmm.
um that's when I realized I was like, I think I gotta start like going out and meeting some people. So I did one of those events, met a couple guys, got sold on some BS stuff, as most people do when they're really new and anxious and just
Hmm.
desperate for, progress. Um, and then I think I tried to find the email, but I think I used you guys open letter back in like 2017 or 18 for a small batch of like 3 or 4 thousand postcards. And I did it and it didn't work. And I was like, nah, it's garbage. 4,000 postcards didn't work. It's garbage. Direct mail is
Yeah.
BS. And then, yeah, I mean, I was a baby at that time.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, so then I just stuck to cold calling. I started to scale that a little bit, like hired some people, managed them myself. But it was just so messy and so, just calls all day long. Like, hey, what do I say to this? What do I say to that? People would just show up and leave, like not physically, but like over Skype or something. They just won't show up and log in and then they go ghost. And it's like just every day it was a new headache. And I wasn't getting any deals anyway. So then I started pay per click, and pay per click was killing it. We didn't do volume at the time. Pay per click helped me scale to maybe 8, 9 deals a year for about a year or two. I'd say about
Hmm.
2 years. But the deals were huge because they were really high quality. I mean, we had 2 6 figure deals. Like they were really big, but it wasn't scalable. It was
Hmm.
just me answering phone calls that came in. After building up to about a $20,000 a month spend on PPC, hired a sales guy, and hiring him was kind of the catalyst of change because I needed to scale for him, because otherwise, why would he work for me?
Right.
It's
Yep.
like, what's the point of
Right.
him having a job if I can't give him leads? So little by little, I had to like wet my palate for it, but I started with like 20,000. I'm sure I could find it in the order histories, but like, we just started with 20, 25, and then we did 35, and then we did 35 consistently. And then I'm like, okay, we're doing like a solid 2, 3 deals a month every time we send out 35,000 postcards. So we just scaled from there, man. It's so simple.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it's really simple. That's kind
Yeah.
of the way I like to explain it to anybody that ever asks me.
So,
Yeah.
so really, you started with direct mail and was like, screw it, not getting any deals, went to PPC. That was working really well, but you weren't able to scale it. So then you
It's hard to
shifted,
scale.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then you added direct mail back in for the scaling purposes, and then you
Yeah.
started to get some deals from that.
Yeah. Because in my opinion, I mean, pay per click, and I'm sure it's still like this. I haven't done it since like 2021 ish. But, I'm in South Florida, which is arguably top 3 most competitive markets
Yeah.
in the world, so it's like we were getting up to $600 per click. I mean, I would like go on my Google Ads account in the morning, leave the gym and I hit refresh and I'm like, okay, spent like 250, got 1 click today. Like that's not great. By lunchtime, I check it again. I had to text the PPC manager. I'm like, hey man, shut us down today. We spent $2,400. It
Jeez.
was just, yeah,
Yeah.
like one month I was like, I told him like, hey man, let's just, let's go balls to the wall. Let's try to scale this up. Spent 28 grand in a month. I'm like, this
Wow.
is not sustainable. Like and
Yeah.
yeah, we had a deal, but it's like, I can't, it just wasn't working. It was too much stress. And then the thing I hated about direct mail at first was that it was so anti-technology. It's
Hmm.
like, it's so dumb is not the right word because it's not, but it's just so dumbed down that
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
so I just swipe my credit card for $4,000 and hope that they call me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of, yeah. It's like that's kind of what you do. So yeah, so that was it. Then I realized I'm like, look, I want to keep my sales guy. I love him. He's still with me today. We're great friends. He's awesome, and um, that's how we got here. Yeah, just
That's
little by little, just kind of, for lack of a better way of expressing it, just you know, you can't make it without risking it.
yeah.
That's kind of what hit me.
Yeah. How did you find your sales guy? I think that's one big thing. A lot of people when they're in the same exact position, right? Of like, all right, I'm doing the deals, all that stuff. Now I have too much going on. I need to hire somebody. I'm nervous to
Yeah.
hire somebody because one, now I really have to push myself to make sure we get leads in the door. And then two, I might not have the money right now to pay that person. So I'm really scared to hire this person to come in, but I need to. And I think that holds a lot of people back. I know when I started like my businesses and I hired my first person, I was like, shit, I don't like have the cash flow
Right.
to pay for them right now, but like that's the only way that I can scale. And I know that was one of the scariest things at the time that I had to do. But once I did it, I was
Yeah.
like, I can't believe I didn't do this sooner because things just started to take off. So tell us a little bit about how you found your salesperson, because to me that might be one of the more challenging things for people to do is hire for that position.
Yeah. Yeah. It was hard. Like anything, we interviewed, we met people for lunch. I even hired like two guys. They both went ghost, you know. And at the time, it's so hard because, like, as the business owner, and I'm sure you felt this at some point. I think anybody who runs or is an entrepreneur of any sort feels this. It's like you are like almost embarrassed because you're like, "Am I an idiot?" You know, it's like these people. I met them for lunch. They were excited, and now when push comes to shove, they just kind of ghosted me. You know, it's
Yeah,
like it puts so much like self doubt. Shit, no, why would they ever want to work for me? I can't make them any money,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
starts to creep in and it gets worse
yeah,
and worse. And then
100%, absolutely.
it sucked, man. It was a really, really miserable, like 90-day span. But to be honest with you, the one thing I did have that I would recommend, I don't know if they still do it, but I worked with Gary Harper
Yep,
with Sharper, and
yep.
they had a gentleman who helped me hire. Well, he was actually, I think he worked, if I'm not wrong, he worked for Canon, the camera company. I think he did interviewing for them. He was like their hiring
Okay.
manager.
Yeah.
And then he retired and came to work for the Harpers. So he actually went on Indeed and all those websites and then filtered out like the 20 people. But it was still up to me after 20 people
Yeah.
served to me on a platter. I still have to figure it out,
Hmm.
and finding the right personality was tough. Yeah, all that. But anyway, I feel like I'm losing track of what I'm trying to say.
No,
But it
you're
was
you're
just
good. What was their background too? What was their background experience? Do you remember what his
my
experience
sales
was?
rep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's always been a dog, man. He was a car sales. He worked for a wholesaling company on the west coast of
Oh, okay.
Florida prior to mine. He was just, and he's still like that. Like I just got my general contractor's license back in April, and he was like, you know, he's like, yeah, let's do construction. He's just one of those guys who
Yeah.
he doesn't care what it is. He'll go and he'll fight and he'll, you know, just stick his nose in and try to get stuff done. So
Yeah.
that's just the personality that he is. And that's why he's like, to me, he's like a foundational part of our business because I make all the decisions with him,
Hmm.
around him and his sales skills. So yeah, that's really it. But I would say if you do it too early, you're going to be disappointed. There's no sweet way to put it. If
Yeah.
you, yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, it's hard to do. It's hard to time.
Yep. Yeah. I
Yeah.
I always think like it's at the point in time that you just can't keep up with everything. And if you have too
Hmm.
many leads coming in the door and you're actually wasting money, right? If you send out and you do a bunch of marketing and you're getting all these calls and you can't call them back for a day or two, that's a bad thing that you're burning money. So at that point in time, like transitioning to somebody new. But yeah, if you don't have the leads coming in and this person's just twiddling their thumbs, it's not a good
Yeah.
thing and they're probably not going to stay. You'll lose a really good person.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
And actually to add on to what you just said about like, you know, you also need to have somebody, what's the right way to say it? What did you just say? Because I was trying to piggyback off what you just said, and it was a really good point. It was right before this. You said something about how you need somebody in to not be twiddling your thumbs.
If
Oh, you
you
know
have
what?
too many, if you have too many leads and you don't can't get back to them,
Right. Yes,
or okay,
exactly. So one thing I wanted to mention was that it's also another thing for me is that I wasn't really that great at sales, you know? So
hmm,
like the deals that I would get weren't really hefty. It was like I was buying a house because I couldn't wholesale it because I didn't negotiate it low enough.
Yeah.
but I signed the
Yeah.
contract with no inspection period, and I felt morally like I had to follow through with what I did. I'm not going to leave them
Yeah.
hanging at the closing table. So um, that's what I was trying to get to a minute ago when I was saying that. But ultimately, you either have too much on your plate or you just suck at sales. And not that I
Hmm.
suck at it, but I just don't think that I'm as good as he is.
Hmm.
Do you get what I mean? It's like I
Absolutely.
since he
100%.
came on, his negotiation skills and the deals he brings are always twice as fat as the deals that I bring. It's
Yeah.
just he's got he's conflict forward. He's not afraid of confrontation. Whereas like I don't, it's not my thing. I don't like to upset
Yeah.
people. It's just
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
who I am.
Yeah. I
But
think that's a
yeah,
great realization that you had because, some people will be like, I'm the best at this, I'm the best at that, right? They're really cocky about like they think that they can get everything done, but realizing that you're not the best at sales. I mean, I'm sure once he came in, he probably got deals that maybe you didn't even see, or like you said, he's getting bigger deals, right? They're fatter deals. So
yeah,
you're making more money than if you were the person doing the negotiating. So
yeah,
that's a great realization on your side and probably made you a lot more money in the long run.
yeah. And I think that kind of applies to everything else. Like it's like for example, with you guys, you know, I'm like with Jake at your company.
Yeah.
I thought I was pretty good with Excel, but Jake's really good with Excel. Like it's like those are the things and I don't send him work for me to do. I'll do whatever I can. But if I really am
Yeah.
stuck, I'll ask him for help. And it's just, I guess it's that concept just blown up. It's like I'll sit there and pay for a bunch of extra add-ons and extensions for Excel, still not be able to get it done. And I'll be like, Jake, I'm
Right.
stumped, man. I need you to filter out this list we just sent with this new one and get rid of the ones we just did, and then add this number in. And then 20 minutes later, he's like, here it is. And I'm like, so, it's just sometimes having people that know what they're doing or are good at that specific thing,
Yeah.
it's much more efficient. And
Yeah,
that's what I
absolutely.
found. Anyway, so to kind of wrap that up, that's what I found with the sales stuff was that I can
Yeah.
do it, but he'll do it better.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
then, so with your direct mail, like take us through how did you identify the people to mail? How did you start off and then how has that changed? Because I know you've been scaling since, and
Yeah.
over time, as you're scaling, you're sending to more people. So did you increase the geographic size, or did you just increase the number of people in the designated area that you're going after? So yeah, walk us through like your direct to seller marketing strategy, how it started, and then where it is today.
Yeah. Yeah. So, loaded question, obviously. We started off doing what everybody was doing, tax, and they still work, but just tax delinquents, utility shutoffs. I was having VAs go on like the code compliance websites and look up like current inspections today, those kind of things. And
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
just a lot of like upfront labor, searching clerk of courts for eviction records, et cetera, doing all that. But kind of what I was saying before, I realized that that's all great, but you need scale.
hmm,
Like, yeah, sure, mailing to a list of 5,000 really highly motivated targets is great, but your odds increase hundredfold if you send it out to five times as. Do you get what I'm saying? It's
yeah, yeah,
just
absolutely.
your chances of landing a nice deal are much bigger when you send out
Yep,
50,000 postcards versus 5,000 really good ones.
right.
So that's what I've realized over time. And so we've just kind of gotten a little loose and fast. I'm not going to lie. We've just kind of been like, hey, you know what? Let's do all intra-family transfers, like people that have been deeded
Nice.
houses,
Love those. Yeah,
pre-foreclosures, still doing tax delinquents. Typically, like everything that is absentee, things past 19, last sold like 1990. And these things change for each place. It's all different, but it's really simple. And I think that's probably something that nobody really wants to hear because it's like there's no secret, you know. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that's really
And
it,
that,
man. It's
and it's interesting that you say that because what I have noticed, and I know, like as your budget increases, right, you don't need as much complexity. So if somebody has less budget, they have to, they'll list stack and do all that stuff to get the highest quality, like 2,000,
Hmm.
3,000, 4,000 records, which is fine.
Yeah.
It works great. But when you start to scale and when you start to send like 50,000 a month, right? You don't have to do that much because you can hit a lot more people,
Yeah.
and your chances, like you said, are going to increase just because you're hitting more people, and the chances of
Yeah.
them being in the situation and the need to sell at that point in time increases dramatically.
That's what we found
Yeah.
because there's been some batches where we'll send out, 65,000 and day one, this happened back in, I want to say like March. Day one, they hit, we had a contract that day. Like they mailed out on a Friday, they hit on Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning. And like literally that day we had a signed contract. We sold the deal and made like 60 grand. But we didn't have anything else come in after that.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
just, I wouldn't consider it gambling, but it's almost like you have to be able to stomach that risk of, you know, getting one deal and breaking even, maybe getting one deal and making a little bit, or just breaking even, maybe even losing money. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with what you said. I think as your budget grows, the need for complexity decreases. And I think I'm a believer in like the dumber it is, the better it is because it's
Hmm.
more actionable. I think the quicker that you can do something, like the quicker you can download that list and just get a postcard in front of them, get them on the phone, do something, go knock on their door, leave a flyer, whatever that may be. That's what's going to win. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
how dialed in your list is or how many stacked. It's all BS. Just get in front of them. That's it. It's and that was kind of the one thing I wish I could really tell myself like 5, 6 years ago is just that, listen to hundreds of thousands of hours of podcasts and all this stuff. And at the end of the day, it's like you're only as good as much as you're willing to risk.
Yeah.
If you're
Right.
not willing to swipe your credit card and you're only willing to cold call, well, then yeah, you're going to be a solopreneur and that's great. But
Hmm.
you got to realize that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure you have
Absolutely.
the same with the direct mail business. I mean, that's got to be a huge, I can't imagine what your overhead is with the machinery and insurances and employees and all that. And it's like, well, now you're serving all these people and you're probably doing great. It's just,
Yeah.
but you have to have the balls
But
to buy
yeah,
the equipment.
it is. It's
Yeah.
true. Like every step of this game, every step of the business, you're risking. There's a risk,
Yeah.
right? And the longer that you're in the business, it's not like you don't take any more risks. Actually taking bigger risks.
Yeah.
So you're like
100%.
you're tolerating those smaller risks that maybe last year would keep me up all night, but now I make that same risk today and it's like, oh, that's nothing. So
Exactly.
you get to you build that risk muscle, and it becomes easier and easier that you go through it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's great that,
100%.
yeah. So take us to where you are today. Like, on average, like how many deals are you doing? Are you mostly just focused in direct mail? And yeah, what's your volume look like?
Let's see. I could pull it up real quick. I want to say it's been a little weird. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not as happy as I thought I'd be with our deal count, but
Yeah,
I think it's just because of competitive our market has gotten. Like closed on a rental property at the end of May. 3 days after closing, I went to the house. My guys were already there cleaning up and painting, and I opened the mailbox and I mean, 8 postcards just in a week, 8 postcards,
well, yeah,
letters from
yeah,
Open Door, Home Inc., all those big guys. And I'm like, man, this is why it's harder to get deal. It's like,
yeah,
this is why it's hard. So anyway,
yeah. Yeah,
this year,
this is definitely just a natural thing. I've been talking to a lot of investors over the last couple of weeks, and all of them have been saying that, they're adjusting more often, or not so much adjusting, but their cost per lead and cost per acquisition is absolutely
uh,
increasing. So their ability to, come up with different strategies or way to purchase properties and have more options that's what they have to do to get more deals and
yeah,
keep the money coming in. So
yeah,
what you said is not unique to you. This is
no,
very much of a systematic all around the country.
yeah, it's been really hard. I mean, 2022 was awesome. 2023 was also great. I mean, we average right now, I would say the last 3 years, we probably average 20 to 25 deals a year. And while it's not a lot, we don't do, and I'm not saying that other people do this, but we don't do smaller deals. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think we've only had two deals in the last 4 years that we've done under 10,000.
Yeah.
We just don't
Yeah. Yeah.
do, like, our average per deal is almost $40,000. They're big deals and they're heavy
Right.
and they're, it's like all focus on them. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll even go down there on closing day for the buyer and just make sure that they get in, because it's like these are high ticket items.
Yeah.
And people talk about like automate, you know, um, automate, delegate, et cetera. And that's all great. But it's like you got a $40,000 deal closing, you're going to go and make sure that
Yeah.
everybody's happy and that you're
Right.
getting that wire. So that's why, I could definitely improve in a million different places. I think we all can. But yeah, right now we're pretty much stuck at that like 22, 25 deals a year kind of thing. So we're averaging anywhere from, what does that make it? 1.5, 2.5-ish deals a month.
Mm-hmm.
But
Is that
recently
something you want to scale? Are you looking
I
to
do.
scale that, or are
Yeah.
you? Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm happy with where we are, but I mean, we all want to grow. It's
Mm-hmm.
like if you're not growing, you're just staying stagnant. So like this last batch we just did with you guys, I think it was 10,000 postcard order and then another like 76, something like that. It was a big order. This is the first time we're switching it up a little bit. We're pulling out of Palm Beach and we're actually going to be moving up to, we're pulling out of Palm Beach and Miami-Dade because the competition is just ridiculous. We're going to stay in Broward just because the deals in Broward are, we have such a big spread, but we're going to move up to like a little bit of a sleepier part of Southeast Florida. It's
Mm-hmm.
about an hour and a half north of me, kind of by like Daytona Beach area.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just a little quieter there. The prices are lower, but the populations are lower, the prices are lower. There's less property there overall, but we're just going to try it and see. Maybe we
Mm-hmm.
won't face as much competition there. And the way I look at it is like, hey, if 50,000 postcards in this county equals three deals, what will it equal in this county where there's, half the competition? I don't know.
Yeah.
So this is the first month we're trying to find out.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really
Yeah.
curious on how that goes too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just started, the phone just started ringing yesterday. So we'll
Nice.
see how the next couple of days goes. But yeah,
Awesome.
man. Yeah, so
Very
that's
cool.
it. I mean, right now, yeah, we're trying to scale and but yeah, I think it's hard. I think right now is, I wouldn't say it's an easy time. I think people
Mm-hmm.
that probably got started in like 21 or 22, where if you just got a deal, you're getting paid.
Yeah.
It's not really like that right now. It's
Right.
like you have to be good at getting the deals negotiated and get them at lower prices.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's just a learning curve. And because we did last year, like I said, I had the wind was taken out of my sails a bit this year because we were on track. We did 750,000 in revenue last year. And that's, for me and one other person, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
For a two-man company, I was really proud of what we did. And then just with the rates going so high, yeah, it just kicked us right in the cojones. So it was just such a bummer, man. But we're climbing back. I'm not
Yeah.
going out like that. So we're gonna fight. We're gonna get back up there.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
What would be some of your, suggestions, feedback, or like, for people that are just getting started in real estate now, or even direct to seller marketing? We were talking about how challenging it is right now. Do you feel like that's going to change later? Should somebody jump in now? What would you do if you got started today?
I hate that like concept of like what I just said, like, oh, now is a tough time, but it doesn't matter. You just got to get started. I have friends now. I'm 30. I have friends now that were timing the market, waiting for COVID to end, so prices came back down. Well, now the house that you could have got for 400 is now
Yeah,
950.
right.
So
Yep.
I just don't believe in that, like, good time, bad time. But what I would say to myself, because I was that kid that was like starting, I was anxious, I was reading everything, I was sleepless at night, would wake up in the morning, I'd listen to every podcast possible. I was cold calling, I was doing everything that someone listening to this probably is doing now. I think you just need to build your confidence. I think that's really what does everything, because if you're not cold calling and getting rejected, you're not going on these appointments, you're not driving an hour out to this appointment, showing up, messing up the contract,
Yeah.
having those awkward conversations that you overbid, and you have those, you need to do that. And if you
Yep.
don't do it, you're just not going to get that confidence. And I think it all
Mhm.
just snowballs. And I think that's what builds into you cold calling a free list that you find online to spending $44,000 a month in direct mail. I think
Mhm.
it's just this slow. Do you get what I'm trying to say? I don't think
Yeah.
there's any special thing to it. And I'm sure
Yeah,
you
it's
know the
it's
same
pushing
thing.
yourself to execute or do something, right?
Right.
Instead
Like,
of, just learning. So many people are in learning mode that it takes them forever to get started, or they never get started. But you need to
right.
keep on pushing yourself to get to that next step, doing something to learn, either positively or negatively, learn those lessons and just to keep on taking like little risks until they start paying off.
But, the other thing too is like, I think a lot of people will listen to like, these sort of celebrities in the real estate investing world, like, just common names that you know on the podcast and stuff. And you from a from my perspective, as when I was a starter, I would think like these guys are geniuses. They don't make a single mistake. These guys are
Yeah.
the greatest in the world at what they do. And I'm not saying they're not incredible, because they are. I mean, these guys have, 50 employees, whatever. It's phenomenal. But I mean, they're still entrepreneurs. They still make mistakes just like we do. I mean, last year, I think we did, how many postcards did I send out last year? Let me see. I think we did 250,000 postcards last year. We did a batch in Orlando of 15,000 postcards back in like August. Dude, I accidentally put a $20,000 offer in each. The calls that we got were,
Wow.
and I thought I proofread it. I was like
Yeah.
stressed out. I was in the middle of a million things. I'm like just trying to get the order in so it goes out that Friday. And you just make mistakes and you just learn.
Mhm.
And now I know I got to triple check my proofs. I mean, it's like you got to learn the
Yeah.
hard way. Sometimes you mess stuff up, but it's like you just kind of have to grow with each mistake.
Yeah. I, I
But yeah,
I agree with you so much. I think when you're not a business owner and you look at business owners, you're like, man, even when I worked for people, I was like, my boss, I was like, man, they just have so much knowledge. They do everything right. And it's kind of like a parent, right? When you're a kid, you're like, my parents know everything. And then you
yeah,
become a parent, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
yeah,
And neither did my
yeah,
parents, but I thought they
yeah,
knew everything, right? It's the
yeah,
same exact thing. You learn as you go through it. You make tons and tons of mistakes every day. We were talking before we started recording that like we're still learning, we're still making mistakes,
yeah.
but
I
you
mean,
learn from them and you move on.
yeah, we make mistakes I mean, we still do. And I
Yeah.
think that's, like I said, and I'm probably repeating myself at this point, but, like I said, I think it's confidence is the biggest thing. I don't really think I mean, for lack of better expression, you just have to have the balls to spend the money, and you have to have the balls come from the confidence of doing it before.
Mhm.
Like there's no chance you're going to send out 50,000 postcards if you've never had a conversation with the seller before. That would just
Right.
be stupid.
Yeah.
So go have a conversation, go on appointments. You're not going to know how to explain a contract to a seller if you've never explained a contract to a seller before. It's just you have
Hmm.
to go out and suck. You have
Yeah.
to go out
Yeah,
and
you
bomb
really
these
do. Yeah.
appointments, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's all it is, man. That's how I'm going to tell my kids, like, hey, you know what? You're going to suck at it for the first 6 months, probably
Yeah.
longer, but that's it. I don't know. I feel
Yeah.
like it's just that simple, man. I just think the sooner you get started, the more work and more time and more stress and energy you pour into something. That's it. It's,
Yeah.
you're only going to get what you give, and that's it.
Yeah. Completely agree.
Yeah. Yeah,
Completely
for
agree,
sure.
man. Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to hold you up anymore. I think that we got everything that we need on the
Cool.
podcast. Max, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the little one again. And
Yeah. And I was going to say, sorry if I seem like a little bit of a space cadet, because I'm running on
I get
4 hours of sleep today. And this
it.
is my probably 600th milligram of caffeine today, and it's not helping. So yeah, I got this guy. I got a 2-year-old here, and I
Yeah.
got a dude. It's
Yeah.
killing me. So
I I understand. All parents
I know you
understand.
do. Yeah, for
Um,
sure. But yeah, man, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much,
Yeah.
Max,
All right.
and have a great day.
You too, man. Talk to you later.
All right, bye.